Hello everyone, John AG here. Welcome back to my channel, Aurex. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, in this channel you will find the real information, real market updates that everyone cannot tells you. So please subscribe to this channel and love you all of my subscribers for your support. And please watch this video till the very end because YouTube will not push my videos to more people. Listen closely to the silence of the market. Behind the flashing green and red numbers on your screen, behind the manic voices of financial anchors on television, there is a profound and terrifying shift happening right beneath our feet. We are standing in the year 2026, and the financial gravity that held our world together for the last 40 years has fundamentally reversed. What if I told you that the money sitting in your bank account right now, the savings you bled for, the capital you traded your precious time on Earth to accumulate, is actively evaporating? What if I told you that the entire narrative you have been fed about endless prosperity, permanently low inflation, and the absolute supremacy of paper currency was nothing more than a temporary, debt-fueled illusion? The world we are living in today is unforgiving. It is a world where geopolitical alliances are fracturing into hostile economic blocs, where supply chains that once spanned the globe in frictionless harmony are now weaponized, and where the cost of basic human survival is accelerating faster than wages could ever hope to keep up. You feel it. You feel it every single time you walk out of a grocery store with fewer bags but a lighter wallet. You feel it when you look at the price of housing, energy, and medical care. The authorities told you inflation was transitory. They told you they had the tools to fix it. They lied. They did not have the tools. They only had the printing press. And now the bill has come due. Most people are paralyzed by this realization. They are frozen by the daily bombardment of fear, watching their purchasing power bleed out from 1,000 invisible cuts. But there is a different way to look at this crisis. There is a way to look into the abyss of this decade and see not destruction, but the greatest wealth transfer in human history. Chaos, when viewed through the lens of history and mathematics, is not random. Chaos is simply the brutal, necessary restructuring of capital, and nobody on the face of this earth understands the anatomy of this chaos better than the legendary resource investor, Rick Rule. For over 50 years, Rick Rule has navigated the violent, cyclical, and often heartbreaking boom and bust cycles of the commodities market. He has built a dynasty of wealth not by following the herd, but by actively betting against the psychological flaws of the human race. Today, we are going to tear apart his macro thesis for 2026. We are going to look at the undeniable mathematical truths behind gold, silver, oil, and the staggering, artificial intelligence-driven supercycle happening right now in uranium. We are going to explore the precise price triggers he is watching and exactly how he is positioning his capital to not just survive the coming storm, but to conquer it. To understand the strategy, you must first completely rewire your brain and adopt his foundational philosophy. Human beings are biologically wired to be horrific investors. Our Paleolithic brains were designed for survival on the open savanna, not for navigating the New York Stock Exchange. When primitive man saw a crowd of his peers running furiously in one direction, his instinct was to run with them. He assumed they were either fleeing a predator or chasing a food source. In nature, the herd protects you. In the financial markets, the herd leads you directly, inevitably, to the slaughterhouse. People buy assets when they are popular, which means they buy them when they are expensive and the upside is already gone. They sell assets when they are hated and despised, which means they sell them when they are cheap and the risk is entirely removed. Rick Rule's entire empire is built on doing the exact opposite. He steps into the dark, terrifying void when everyone else is sprinting for the exits. You are either a contrarian or you will be a victim. This is the mantra. Bear markets are the authors of bull markets. It is a law of financial physics. When the price of a critical commodity falls below the cost to pull it out of the earth, companies stop producing it. They shut down mines. They cap oil wells. They fire their geologists. This massive destruction of supply absolutely guarantees a future shortage, and that future shortage absolutely guarantees a violent upward explosion in price. Right now, the global economy is presenting us with a landscape of extreme, almost comical distortions. Let us break down the core pillars of reality, starting with the ultimate bedrock of human wealth. Look at gold. In 2026, we have watched gold push with terrifying ease past the $4,500 an ounce mark. For the better part of 2 decades, the mainstream financial media laughed at gold advocates. They called gold a barbarous relic of a bygone era. They told you it yielded no interest, it produced no earnings, and it was essentially a useless pet rock compared to the hyper-growth of technology stocks and the speculative mania of cryptocurrencies. But watch what the smartest, most powerful, and most heavily armed entities on the planet have been doing while the retail public was distracted. Central banks. Russia, China, India, Saudi Arabia, and a coalition of emerging markets have been aggressively, quietly, and ruthlessly accumulating physical gold at a record-breaking, insatiable pace. Why? Because a monumental paradigm shift occurred earlier this decade. When the Western banking system weaponized fiat currency and froze sovereign reserves, the rest of the world learned a chilling lesson. If you do not hold your wealth outside the counterparty risk of the Western financial system, you do not actually own your wealth. You merely have a permission slip that can be revoked at any moment. Gold is the sovereign shield. Rick Rule does not view gold as a speculative investment to get wealthy. He views it as a mandatory insurance policy to stay wealthy. Gold is the ultimate, uncompromising denominator of fiat currency failure. When you see gold hit $4,500 or $5,000 or $6,000 an ounce, you must understand a critical truth. Gold is not actually going up. An ounce of gold today buys exactly the same amount of goods, services, and human labor that it bought 100 years ago. Gold is perfectly stationary. It is a mirror reflecting the total collapse in the purchasing power of the paper money used to measure it. The trigger you must watch right now is the real interest rate environment. The Federal Reserve is trapped in a fatal mathematical paradox. If they keep interest rates high to fight sticky structural inflation, they will bankrupt the United States government, which is choking on an unpayable mountain of sovereign debt. If they cut rates and print trillions more to monetize that debt, inflation will rip through the economy like a wildfire. In either scenario, the real return on paper cash remains deeply, punishingly negative. Gold thrives when faith in the competence of central planners dies. Rick's strategy right now is a masterclass in leverage. He maintains physical gold bullion as the unbreakable bedrock of his liquidity. It is the uncancelable, unprintable asset. But for explosive, life-changing upside, he is deploying capital aggressively into gold equities, the mining companies. In 2026, gold mining companies are printing staggering amounts of free cash flow at these metal prices. Their profit margins are expanding rapidly. Yet, because the general public is entirely historically illiterate and scarred by past mining bear markets, these equities are trading at laughably compressed valuations. The herd is completely asleep. When the broader market finally wakes up to the mathematical reality of $4,500 gold, the sudden rush of institutional capital into the tiny, illiquid gold mining sector will be like trying to force the entire volume of the Pacific Ocean through a garden hose. The upward revaluation will be violent and historic. If gold is the heavy, immovable anchor of the portfolio, silver is the kinetic slingshot. Silver is arguably the most schizophrenic, misunderstood, and wildly volatile commodity on the periodic table. It suffers from a dual identity that makes it entirely unique. On one hand, it is a monetary metal, carrying thousands of years of human history as real money, often acting as gold's wilder, more volatile sibling. On the other hand, it is one of the most critical, irreplaceable industrial metals in the modern technological age. We are currently staring down the barrel of a multi-year structural supply deficit that defies logic. The world is physically consuming vastly more silver than it is pulling out of the ground. Look around you at the mandate for the green energy transition. Look at the aggressive electrification of the global grid. You physically cannot build a commercial-grade solar panel without a significant paste of silver. You cannot build a high-performance electric vehicle without silver lining its electrical contacts. You cannot build the advanced circuitry, the semiconductors, and the massive server farms required for the artificial intelligence boom without silver. There is absolutely no known substitute on Earth that conducts electricity and thermal heat as efficiently as silver. This creates a terrifying dynamic for manufacturers: price inelasticity. If you are a multinational corporation manufacturing a $60,000 electric vehicle or a billion-dollar AI data center, you are not going to halt your entire production line simply because the 2 ounces of silver required suddenly tripled in price. The cost of silver is a microscopic fraction of the final product. You do not care what the price is, you simply pay it. You have to have the physical metal. Yet, supply is fundamentally broken. You cannot simply flip a switch and open a silver mine to meet this demand. The vast majority of the world's silver is mined purely as a byproduct of base metals like copper, zinc, and lead. Furthermore, even if you find a pure silver deposit today, it takes an average of 10 to 15 years and hundreds of millions of dollars in capital to navigate the environmental permitting, feasibility studies, and construction required to bring a mine online. The supply is trapped. Historically, the gold to silver ratio has sat comfortably between 40 to 1 and 60 to 1. When it stretches far beyond that, to 80 or 90, it screams that silver is radically, historically undervalued relative to gold. Rick Rule loves silver specifically because it is so hated and so manipulated by paper derivative markets. But paper contracts cannot build solar panels. At prices pushing aggressively past $60 an ounce in 2026, silver is finally entering true, unbridled price discovery mode. The massive commercial shorts are being violently squeezed, and the physical stockpiles at the COMEX and LBMA are draining to dangerously low levels. Rick's strategy with silver combines ironclad patience with aggressive positioning in the absolute highest quality developers and producers. Because the entire global silver market is so tiny, a rounding error compared to tech stocks, when the institutional momentum truly shifts, the price action defies gravity. Silver does not walk up the stairs, it takes the elevator, and sometimes it shoots straight through the roof. Now, we arrive at the absolute crown jewel of the contrarian macro thesis, uranium. If you want a definitive masterclass in how to build dynastic wealth by doing what terrifies other people, look at Rick Rule's 20-year history with this radioactive metal. He was buying uranium companies when the price was languishing at $20 a pound, when the entire world had turned its back on nuclear energy following the emotional trauma of the Fukushima disaster. He suffered for years. He sat in empty conference rooms pitching a hated asset, looking like a madman. But look at the reality of 2026. The uranium market has fundamentally, mathematically broken to the upside. The spot price is testing the mid-80s, the long-term contract price is marching aggressively past $100, and institutional analysts are quietly projecting $135 to $150 a pound in the near term. Why? Because the global narrative has completely and violently inverted. We are no longer just talking about a standard baseload power deficit. We are talking about the artificial intelligence revolution colliding headfirst with brutal physical reality. Over the past 2 years, the titans of Silicon Valley, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, Meta, have realized a terrifying truth that threatens their entire business model. AI data centers consume unfathomable, staggering amounts of electricity. AI queries require nearly 10 times the power of a standard internet search. The traditional power grid, heavily reliant on intermittent, unreliable solar and wind energy, physically cannot support this load. AI requires 24/7, ultra-reliable, uninterrupted, carbon-free baseload power. If the power blinks for a fraction of a second, millions of dollars of computational data are destroyed. There is only one power source on the planet that provides reliable, zero-carbon, high-density energy at scale: nuclear power. These trillion-dollar tech giants are now panicking. They are bypassing the traditional, sluggish utility grid entirely. They are directly funding the restart of dormant nuclear facilities. They are signing multi-decade power purchase agreements directly with nuclear plants. They are pouring billions into small modular reactor, SMR, technology. This has created a sheer, unadulterated panic in the traditional utility market. Put yourself in the shoes of a utility manager. Your sole job, your legal mandate, is to keep the lights on for 10 million freezing citizens in the middle of winter. You suddenly realize that the biggest technology companies on Earth, with balance sheets larger than the GDP of entire sovereign nations, are competing with you to buy a highly finite, constrained supply of uranium. The economic beauty of uranium, as Rick Rule constantly preaches, is its extreme, total inelasticity of demand. The actual cost of uranium fuel represents only about 3% to 5% of the total operating cost of a nuclear power plant. If the price of uranium doubles, triples, or quadruples, the cost of the electricity produced barely twitches. It is a rounding error. But, and this is the critical part, if a utility cannot secure the physical fuel, their multi-billion-dollar reactor becomes a worthless, highly regulated concrete monument. The grid collapses, and the city goes dark. Utilities do not buy uranium to make a profit. They buy it to survive. They will pay $80, $150, or $250 a pound because they absolutely, unequivocally have to. Meanwhile, the supply side of uranium is fundamentally crippled. Kazakhstan, the world's largest producer, has consistently struggled with massive sulfuric acid shortages, missing production targets year after year. Geopolitical splintering has made Russian-enriched uranium a massive, toxic supply chain risk for Western utilities, leading to aggressive bans and sanctions. We are looking at a structural deficit of tens of millions of pounds per year, stretching out for the next decade. Rick Rule's strategy here is clinical. He holds the Tier 1 producers who actually have pounds in the ground that can be brought to market safely in secure Western jurisdictions. He holds physical uranium trusts to capitalize on the exact price movement of the commodity. The bull market in uranium is not ending. It is simply shifting gears from a retail speculation phase into a desperate, cutthroat, institutional procurement phase. Finally, we must confront the most hated, unloved, and vital commodity of them all: oil. In mid 2026, oil is the bedrock of civilization, yet it is treated like a pariah. With prices hovering around the $60 to $70 mark, the broader market is currently fixated on temporary supply gluts, phantom fears of a macroeconomic recession, and the relentless political narrative that the era of hydrocarbons is dead. The media insists that electric vehicles have conquered the globe and that the petroleum industry is a dying, archaic dinosaur destined for the history books. Rick Rule sees right through this staggering cognitive dissonance. The human race, particularly in the West, is currently engaged in a mass suicidal delusion. We hate the very energy source that keeps us alive. Understand this: oil is not just the gasoline you put in your car. Oil is the heavy diesel that powers the massive tractors that till the soil to grow the food you eat. It is the bunker fuel that powers the massive cargo ships bringing essential goods and medicine across the global oceans. It is the core petrochemical bedrock of every single plastic, every fertilizer, every synthetic fabric, and almost all modern medical equipment. You absolutely cannot have human civilization at its current scale of 8 billion people without massive, uninterrupted flows of oil. It is a physical impossibility. Because of the aggressive ESG, environmental, social, and governance movement, intense political pressure, and the demonization of fossil fuels, Western oil companies have been completely starved of capital for nearly a decade. Institutional investors demanded that they stop exploring, stop drilling, and return all their free cash flow to shareholders in the form of dividends and buybacks. The companies complied. But oil is a naturally depleting asset. Every single day you pump a barrel of oil out of a well, there is exactly one less barrel in it tomorrow. The decline rate is relentless. If you do not invest hundreds of billions of dollars today, right now, to explore and find the oil you will need 5 years from now, you guarantee a catastrophic supply shock in the future. While the Western world is completely obsessed with the marginal drop in gasoline demand due to the adoption of EVs in wealthy suburbs, they are deliberately ignoring the rest of the planet. The global population is expanding. More importantly, billions of human beings in the emerging markets of Asia, Africa, and South America want the exact same standard of living that you and I take for granted. They want reliable electricity, they want air conditioning, they want air travel, they want modern hospitals, and they want consumer goods. All of that human flourishing requires an exponential increase in the consumption of dense hydrocarbons. Rick Rule's strategy in the oil sector is the absolute epitome of classic, ruthless value investing. Because the sector is so despised by institutional capital and politically sensitive endowments, highly profitable oil companies are trading at incredibly low multiples of their cash flow. They are literally printing money, paying out massive double-digit dividends. Rick is getting paid handsomely in cash every single quarter just to wait. He knows that the current self-inflicted lack of exploration capital absolutely guarantees that when inevitable global demand outstrips the rapidly depleting legacy supply, oil prices will spike violently upward. He is buying the cash-flowing, expertly managed producers that the rest of the market is too politically correct and terrified to touch. So what does this all mean for you, the viewer watching this right now, staring at your screen in 2026? Why does this matter to the safety of your family, the security of your future, and your peace of mind in a world that feels increasingly out of control? It matters because the global financial system is no longer a safe space for the passive, uneducated observer. If you do nothing, you lose. The inflation we are experiencing is a quiet, ruthless thief in the night. It is methodically stealing the time, the sweat, and the energy you sacrificed to earn your wages. If you leave your life savings purely in fiat currency or in overvalued tech stocks, hoping the past decade repeats itself, you are virtually guaranteeing the rapid erosion of your purchasing power and your standard of living. Rick Rule's overarching lesson to us is one of profound, life-altering empowerment, but it requires extreme psychological courage. It requires the emotional fortitude to stand apart from your peers, to look at the math instead of the media, and to trust your own independent research. You must respect the brutal reality of cycles. What goes up on a wave of euphoria will eventually come crashing down. What is hated, despised, and ignored today will be desperately loved tomorrow. The cure for high prices is high prices, which bring on new supply. But the cure for low prices is low prices, which destroy supply and create the next massive boom. You must aggressively hold real, tangible assets. You must own gold to build a sovereign shield around your purchasing power. You must own silver to capture the explosive, uncoiling kinetic energy of the industrial squeeze. You must own uranium to capitalize on the single greatest energy transition and artificial intelligence infrastructure build-out in the history of human civilization. And you must own oil to anchor your portfolio with massive, unloved, deeply discounted cash flow. You must ruthlessly demand value. Do not ever buy a mining stock just because somebody on the internet told a good story. Buy it because the management team has their own money on the line. Buy it because the company generates actual free cash flow, not just press releases. Buy it because the deposit is a Tier 1, world-class asset. Rick Rule evaluates a company by looking directly at the people running it. Are they promoters looking to mine the stock market, or are they actual builders looking to mine the earth? Are they serial successes or serial failures? In a chaotic, unforgiving market, deep, relentless due diligence is the only armor that will protect you. We are living through a period of historic, violent financial transition. The debt burdens of Western nations have crossed the Rubicon. They are mathematically unpayable in real terms. They will be inflated away. The people who understand this reality, who position themselves early in the tangible, essential resources that human beings physically require to live, work, and build, will not only survive this volatile decade, they will build generational wealth that alters the trajectory of their family's bloodline forever. The people who blindly trust the system, who follow the terrified herd, and who let the mainstream media dictate their actions will sadly be the victims of this transition. You have a profound choice to make today. You can be the contrarian or you can be the victim. You can take absolute, uncompromising control of your financial education, look at the brutal, unvarnished realities of supply and demand, and position your capital with courage, logic, and conviction. This channel, Aurex, is entirely dedicated to bringing you these brutal, unfiltered truths. We do not deal in hope. Hope is not an investment strategy. We deal in reality. We study the masters like Rick Rule because they have the literal scars, the decades of experience, and the massive bank accounts to prove that their contrarian methodology actually works in the real world. Thank you for staying with me, John AG, until the very end of this video. The YouTube algorithm actively suppresses this kind of raw, unfiltered financial truth because it scares people, which is exactly why your direct support means absolutely everything to the survival of this channel. If this message resonated with you, if it opened your eyes to the tectonic, unstoppable shifts happening in gold, silver, uranium, and oil right now in 2026, I need you to hit that like button to push this out to the world. Share this video immediately with someone you care about, a friend, a family member, a colleague, someone who desperately needs to hear this reality to protect their family's wealth before it is too late. Leave a comment below right now and tell me which of these 4 critical commodities you are the most bullish on and exactly why. Are you aggressively stacking physical silver to prepare for the paper market breaking? Are you riding the massive AI-driven nuclear wave with uranium equities? I read and value every single comment from this community. Stay strong, stay ruthlessly rational, and never ever follow the herd. I will see you in the next video.